Right now, as you're watching this video, there's a legal battle happening that could completely change how you place your next bet on DraftKings or FanDuel. We're talking about a fight that could force these billion-dollar companies to completely overhaul how they operate. This isn't just another legal dispute. This is the first time in American history that a city has gone to war with any sports betting company, and what happens next could reshape the entire industry. Make sure you stay to the end of the video because I'll explain how this could directly impact you if you bet on sports. So here's what went down. On April 3rd, 2025, Baltimore did something unprecedented. They sued DraftKings and FanDuel. Not a group of angry bettors, not some advocacy organization, but an actual city government taking on the two companies that control over 70% of the sports betting market in America. Now, if you've been betting on sports for a while, you probably think you know how these companies work. You sign up, get a welcome bonus, place some bets, win some, lose some. Pretty straightforward, right? Well, according to Baltimore, what's actually happening behind the scenes is way more sinister than you realize. The city claims that DraftKings and FanDuel aren't just running sports books. They're running what amounts to sophisticated data harvesting operations designed to identify and exploit people with gambling problems. And here's the kicker. They're allegedly making most of their money not from casual bettors like you might expect, but from problem gamblers who can't control their betting. To understand why this matters, you need to know some numbers that the industry doesn't really want you thinking about. According to the University of Maryland research that Baltimore cited in their lawsuit, over 20% of online sports bettors show signs of disordered gambling. That's more than 1 in 5 people. And here's what's really disturbing. 30% of problem gamblers report having suicidal thoughts. We're not talking about people who just lose a few bucks betting on games. We're talking about people whose lives are being destroyed. But here's where it gets really interesting. Baltimore isn't just saying these companies are profiting off problem gambling. They're saying they're actively creating problem gamblers through something they call a two-pronged scheme. The first prong is something you've probably experienced yourself, those bonus bet promotions. You know the ones. Bet $10, get $150 in bonus bets. Sounds great, right? But Baltimore argues these aren't really bonuses at all. They're designed to force you into rapid-fire betting patterns. Most of these bonus bets expire within 7 days and can't be withdrawn as cash, meaning you have to keep betting over and over again to get any value. It's like giving someone a gift card that expires tomorrow. It creates artificial urgency that pushes people into compulsive behavior. The second prong is where things get really scary. According to the lawsuit, FanDuel's parent company, Flutter Entertainment, collects at least 186 attributes on every single bettor. This ranges from how often you check scores, to what time of day you bet, to how you react to losses. They're building psychological profiles of every single person that downloads the app. That would make social media companies jealous. And what do they do with all this data? They use it to identify people who are developing gambling problems, and then they target those people with VIP programs and personal hosts whose entire job is to keep them betting. Think about that for a second. The more signs you show of losing control, the more special treatment you get. Here's how we know this targeting actually works. Professional gamblers have figured out how to game the system by mimicking problem gambling behavior. They'll check scores at weird hours, make erratic bets, and act like they're chasing losses, specifically because they know this triggers the algorithms that identify vulnerable users. If pros can manipulate the system by acting like problem gamblers, that means the companies definitely know how to identify and target the real ones. Now you might be thinking, this sounds illegal, so why hasn't anyone done anything about it before? And that's where the legal genius of Baltimore's approach comes in. Most people who want to sue DraftKings or FanDuel hit a massive roadblock called forced arbitration. When you sign up for these apps, buried in those terms and conditions nobody reads, you agree to settle any disputes through private arbitration instead of going to court. It's like agreeing to fight with your hands tied behind your back. But here's the thing. The city of Baltimore isn't a customer. They're a city government using their consumer protection laws to go after what they say are deceptive business practices. That means no arbitration clause can stop them, and they can demand a trial where a judge will decide whether these practices are fair. The city is suing under something called the Baltimore Consumer Protection Ordinance, which they passed in 2023 specifically to give them more power to go after companies that harm residents. Every violation can result in a $1,000 fine, And when you're talking about potentially millions of individual targeting incidents, that adds up fast. But DraftKings and FanDuel aren't going down without a fight. The moment Baltimore filed this lawsuit, both companies tried to move it from state court to federal court, hoping for a more business-friendly environment. As of right now, that fight is still ongoing, and where this case ends up could determine how the whole thing plays out. The people leading this charge are fascinating. You've got Mayor Brandon Scott, a 40-year-old progressive who's clearly trying to make a name for himself by taking on corporate America. Then there's City Solicitor Ebony Thompson, the first woman and first openly gay city solicitor in Baltimore's 294-year history. She's the one who previously secured a $266 million verdict against opioid distributors, so she's definitely not intimidated by big companies with big legal teams. On the legal side, Baltimore brought in Adam Levitt from DiCello Levitt, who's basically a celebrity in the class action lawsuit world. This guy has gone after some of the biggest companies in America and won. So what happens next? Well, the immediate future depends on whether this case stays in state court or gets moved to federal court. If it stays in state court, Baltimore has a much better chance because local juries tend to be more sympathetic to cities taking on big corporations. If it moves to federal court, the companies get a broader jury pool and generally more favorable legal environment. But here's what makes this really interesting. Baltimore isn't the only city paying attention. Legal experts are already saying that if Baltimore wins, we're going to see copycat lawsuits from cities across the country. Chicago, Philadelphia, Detroit, any city with significant sports betting activity could potentially file similar suits. And that could force changes that go way beyond just these two companies. Right now, federal and state regulators have been pretty hands-off when it comes to how sports betting companies operate. But if cities start winning these consumer protection cases, it could pressure Congress to pass federal legislation. There's already something called the Safe Bet Act that would implement nationwide protections similar to what Baltimore is demanding. It's been sitting in Congress without much momentum, but successful municipal lawsuits could change that. The international precedent is already there. In the UK, Flutter Entertainment, FanDuel's parent company, already implements financial vulnerability checks, restricts betting for users under 25, and has curtailed their VIP programs. So we know these protections can work without destroying the business model. The question is whether American companies will voluntarily adopt these practices or whether they'll have to be forced into it through lawsuits and legislation. For regular bettors, this could mean significant changes in how these apps work. We might see limits on bonus bet promotions, restrictions on VIP programs, mandatory cooling off periods, and much more transparency about how your data is being used to target you. The companies will probably argue that these changes will hurt the customer experience and make betting less fun. But Baltimore's argument is that the current fun is built on the systematic exploitation of people who can't control their gambling, and that's not sustainable or ethical. Looking at the bigger picture, this lawsuit represents something much larger than just sports betting. It's a test of whether cities can use local consumer protection laws to regulate industries that federal and state governments have been reluctant to police. If Baltimore succeeds, it could open the door for municipal litigation against all kinds of companies that harm local residents but operate under federal regulation. The timeline for resolution is still unclear. We should know within the next few months whether the case stays in state court or moves to federal court. After that, we're looking at potentially years of litigation, unless the companies decide to settle early to avoid the bad publicity and potential copycat suits. What do you think? Should cities be able to sue sports betting companies over these practices, or do you think this is government overreach? Let me know in the comments below. I will post an update to this video if we hear any new news, so please subscribe to stay in the loop. We are so close to 1,000 subscribers, and that is a huge goal of mine. Thank you for watching.